are back with another true crime video, and this week I'm going to be talking to you about another case that went unsolved for way too long, and it sadly involves a 13-year-old boy. Just readjusted the camera a little bit because I felt like I was a little too close. Anyway, if you are now seated comfortably, we'll get into it. It's 7 p.m. on August 21st, 1985 in Pennsylvania. And a young boy called David Reed has not returned home. He'd always go out every day on his bike, like he loved his bike. It was described as like, inseparable, like he didn't go anywhere without his bike, he loved it. And every day when he'd go out, he'd tell his mum, "I love you and I will be back." He was very close with his family, like he wasn't shy about how much he loved his family. He would always tell his mum and his older sister how much he loved them. On this night, he went out, he told his mum, "I'll be back," but he didn't return. And he's not one to miss his curfew. Like he followed the rules, and he'd come home when he was told to come home. His mum calls her sister and says, "He has not come home. Like, have you seen him?" And David's cousin was in the room while her mother got the call from David's mother saying he hasn't come home, and all she can remember saying is like, "Ooh, he's in trouble." Not like in trouble as in like, is he okay? More like in trouble of he didn't come home when he was told to. Naughty. David's mother sent out his two older brothers to go and search for him. They looked everywhere that he could have possibly been, but they had no luck. They couldn't find him anywhere. So this led them to having no other choice but to call for help. That night, the streets around his house and the local train tracks were searched relentlessly by firemen, but still nothing. So his family went to bed that night worried sick. It's now the next day, so August 22nd, and David's bike has been found by none other than his sister, Virginia. And she was distraught because, as I said before, him and his bike, inseparable. He loved his bike. It wasn't like him to just leave it somewhere. So that meant to them that something serious had happened. Something was really wrong. They found it at the train tracks nearby because that's typically the place he would go to just hang out, whether on his own, with people, he liked to go there. The family are trying anything and everything to get any sort of information from anyone so they could find him and bring him home. His cousins went all around town hanging up missing person posters on all the lampposts. These posters listed everything about him, like his hairstyle, like what colour the hair is, his eye colour, his height, how much he weighs. In the photo he's wearing glasses, but they even put on it he's not wearing glasses. And at the bottom it says, "If found, please contact either the police department or his mother, Joanne." It's now December 15th, 1985, 4 months after David's gone missing, and the police get a call from somebody that lives nearby. They have found human remains in the wooded area near their home. They told the police that they had lost their cat, so him and his family walked out to the woods to try and find it, and in doing so they stumbled across a human skull. This is where they did something that you're really not supposed to do. A typical person, if they were to find that, they would be like, okay, you wouldn't go near it, you'd say, okay, I'm gonna go call the police real quick. No. This man picked it up and took it home. Now we know as a collective here that you're not supposed to tamper with anything like that. You're supposed to leave the scene exactly how it is so the police can really do their investigating and see, how things have laid out so they can piece everything together. But no, this man takes it with him. Anyways, the police get to the scene and he takes the police back up to the woods. He shows them where he found the skull and the police searched the area around it and they managed to find more bones. It was in between a little opening in the trees. Along with the bones, they found what was left of his clothes. Now, when the family were describing what he was wearing, they said that he was wearing a white t-shirt with the word Republican on it. And from what they found, they could see that it looked like the word Republican, or what was left of the word Republican. He was also wearing blue jeans, and that was also found. There was no doubting that this was the remains of David Reed. This is all they have at this point, his remains, that prove that something's happened, clearly. but they don't have any witnesses. They don't have any suspects. So where do they go from here? They decided to turn to an anthropologist to look closely at David's remains. First thing they noted was that there were teeth marks from all of the rodents that had been eating at him, but also a fracture at the back of his head. But because, again, nobody saw it, they just kind of had to assume that he might have just fallen and hit his head. So at this point, the cause of death was filed as undetermined. They had a woman come forward and say that they saw David getting into a blue van. They even supplied the number plate for the police to investigate, which they immediately had broadcast across the county. They ran that number plate in so many different ways, like changing letters to numbers and numbers to letters that kind of look the same, like a B to an 8 or an 8 to a B. But nothing came back. They couldn't find anything. So the case went cold for a very, very, very long time. And we move forward to 2005, 19 years after David went missing, or as we now know, David's death. It's the springtime, so early in the year, and a man called Robert Bednar, but goes by Trooper Bob Bednar, walks into the office of one of the investigators of David Reed's case, or was one of the investigators because now it's 19 years later, saying that he had been assigned to open the cold case of David Reed. Robert Bednar really, really wanted to reopen this case. Like, he really wanted to just find who was responsible. So when he was assigned it, the first thing he did was look back at old interviews. And he did narrow in on one individual. And this individual did have ties to the family. He knew his brothers and his cousins. He was also a drug dealer at the time and was currently reincarcerated. So they went to speak to him at the jail, and when they approached him, he was shocked. They went to this guy because obviously there's that woman from 19 years ago that said she saw David getting into a blue van, so there was always the theory of him being abducted and taken to a different location. And this guy owned a light blue van. He was from around where David lived, and he was also known for sexually abusing children. So, as Robert Bednar said, he fit our profile. On March 25th, 2005, Robert's just sitting in his office doing some work when this guy with the light blue van that they are suspecting is responsible for the death of David Reed arrives. So now everyone's thinking, he's here to talk about that. He's going to tell Robert exactly what's gone on. So now everybody's excited. Everybody's like, yes, we're finally going to figure out what happened to David Reed. But no. This guy was only there for his annual Megan's Law registration. They took a closer look into this guy and found that at around the time that David was killed, this guy was actually in federal prison, meaning he was nowhere near the scene. He was behind bars. So now they are back to square one. One of Robert's supervisors even went to him and said, "Are we done now? Like, are you satisfied? You took a shot at it. It didn't work. Are we going to put this to bed?" But Robert wasn't ready to give up. He wanted to put this on TV so it could reach a bigger audience, so that hopefully somebody would come forward, just with like any sort of information at all, because they've got none right now. And they used his sister's photo, so Virginia's photo, as the face of it. And after doing so, they had quite a lot of people coming forward saying that something suspicious about it was that there was one person that disappeared after David went missing, and that was someone called Joseph Geiger. Now, Joseph Geiger wasn't just anybody around there, he was the local drug dealer. So people are going to notice that the local drug dealer is no longer local. He's not there anymore. Not only was he the local drug dealer, but he was also growing his own marijuana in his back garden, which is also the wooded area where David Reed's body was found. And just to really show you what kind of person he is, apparently he would be at parties telling people, "Oh, if you want to kill someone, do it around here because you can get away with it." He's the kind of person that makes, your skin crawl. You meet a person like that and you're like, you're a wrong'un. Not that I've met people like that, but you can imagine. And his family told that to the police while they were still searching for him 19 years ago, but they didn't do anything with that information. Not at the time. Now that they found another person to narrow in on. They obviously want to question him. When asked, Geiger says, "I only saw him around town like one time, and then he shows up dead in my back garden. But for the night of the murder, he has no alibi. So it doesn't take long for him to break." And he turns to Bob Betnar and says, "I was there." But he said that he wasn't alone. He said he just saw what happened. And it was actually a guy called John Fry. When looking at John Fry in 1985, you can see that he's a smaller kid, smaller than Joseph Geiger. And John Fry would typically get in trouble back then for drinking and all that type of stuff. And so Joseph Geiger says he was with John Fry and he saw John hit David Reed in the head. So now they question John Fry. And both John Fry and Joseph Geiger's stories matched, except for the one detail of who did it. John Fry actually said that it was Geiger that hit David in the head. Okay, so both stories match, but don't match. So they wanted to get another opinion. So once again, they go to an anthropologist, and because of the work that the anthropologist did, they were able to get the cause of death changed to blunt force trauma, and the manner of death changed to homicide. When looking at both John Fry and Joseph Geiger, they found that John Fry was right-handed, Joseph Geiger was left-handed, and the fracture on David Reed's face was on the right-hand side, meaning that a wound on the right side of the face was more likely to have been made by somebody who is left-handed, Joseph Geiger. It's August 20th, 2005, and a warrant has been issued, a day before the 20th anniversary of the death of David Reed. They wanted it to be around this day, around that date, for more like symbolic purposes. Like they wanted it to be the anniversary of the death. His family had mixed emotions about this because, on one hand, obviously they're thrilled that the man responsible for the death of their loved one was finally caught and paying for what he did. But they're also looking at, this took 20 years to solve. It took them that long to find the guy. And not only that, it was looking more at Joe Geiger and being like, you had all that time to just live your life. While we were all mourning, you were just living your life. While we were trying to figure out what had happened to our David, you were just living your life. After killing someone and taking away their life, you were just living your life. Joe Geiger is charged with third-degree murder, manslaughter, tampering with physical evidence, and abuse of a corpse. Joe Geiger took a plea deal, and as a part of his plea deal, he had to explain in detail what happened. And he said that he was growing marijuana plants in his garden and found that David was stealing them. So he found where David was going to be at the train tracks because that's where he would go to hang out, and confronted him. He said that he saw David in one of the carts, and when he confronted him, he hit him. And when he hit him, David fell backwards and hit his head on a metal object. Now, Geiger said that when he hit David and he fell backwards, Geiger just started crying. But then both Geiger and Fry walk off. They leave and go into town for a bit. And then when they come back, they were hoping that he wouldn't be there anymore, but he was. They saw David Reed still laying exactly where they left him. So now, because they're thinking he's dead, they move his body to Geiger's back garden, in the woods where his remains were found. Now when it comes to the crying bit, where he said that he cried when he saw what he'd done, some people didn't believe that. They believed more that he said he was crying because he was caught. Because when it went to trial, he showed no remorse. There was no emotion related to what he had done. So if he was so distraught, where's that emotion now? Now this is where my brain can't really figure this out. So after being charged with third-degree murder, manslaughter, tampering with physical evidence, and abuse of a corpse, guess what his sentence was? I quote when I say this: no more than 2 years behind bars. This man killed someone, walked free for 20-odd years, and now when he's finally caught, he only gets up to 2 years. 2 years is the max. What? 2 years for killing someone? I'm confused. He really did mean it when he said, if you want to kill someone, do it around here because you can get away with it. 2 years is nothing. Just like his cousin said, that man took away someone's friend, someone's son, someone's cousin, someone's sibling, took away a future for that one person, and still gets to have a future himself. He had 20 years of a future, and now just 2 years behind bars, quick over and done, and then gets to go and live his life. Make it make sense. please. I don't think there's much more I can say about this. Just confused. I think that's my word to sum up this. Anyway, I will be back next week with a brand new true crime story, and I hope I will see you there.